From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Claire Harvey. It's Tuesday, October 14, 2025. 2 years and 7 days since the horror of the October 7 Hamas massacre in southern Israel, the last living Israeli hostages are free. Starved, abused, held in tunnels and tormented by the terror group, the 20 hostages freed include 2 soldiers and several men seized from private homes in kibbutz communities, as well as revellers from the Nova Music Festival and security guards who were working at the dance party. Israel has also released nearly 2,000 Palestinians from prison to scenes of wild celebrations in the Gazan city of Khan Yunis. More on that story in a moment, and of course you can follow the latest at theaustralian.com.au. In other news today, a huge backdown by Treasurer Jim Chalmers on his plan to tax unrealised capital gains on superannuation balances over $3 million. Chalmers has dramatically scaled back the plan, but says he hasn't been forced to back down by the Prime Minister. Today, the view from the Middle East with our correspondents on the ground. After 737 days, freedom on a glorious, clear skies morning in a tiny slip of land which has known so much heartbreak. Our reporter Liam Mendes was on the ground as Israelis finally saw the pictures that mark the end of a living hell. You can barely hear Liam over the celebrations in Hostages Square, in a sea of blue and white Israeli flags. The last 20 living hostages held by Hamas since October 7, 2023 are all men, civilians mainly. 2 soldiers, security guards, fathers, twin brothers, boyfriends, sons.
The first thing Hamas did was connect these young men with their families via video calls, which really speaks to the surreal nature of this conflict. And so we just see some of these young men appearing on FaceTime calls with their families and speaking to them for the first time in 2 years in some cases, often with a Hamas captor standing masked in the background, watching on, listening to these interviews.
Yoni Bashan has been reporting on the ground from Israel and Gaza since the war began 2 years ago.
But in all cases, these hostages, they've been underground for the past 2 years, so they appeared, as you would expect, pale, gaunt, malnourished. They looked, in some cases, like they did in the proof of life videos that have been released over the past 12 to 24 months. Their voices sounded surprisingly strong, but they're obviously experiencing a very happy occasion to be ending their nightmare in Gaza. So they did sound good. We know that some people in the second group appeared to be in quite a dire way when we saw them in their proof of life videos, appearing skeletal, emaciated, in one case digging his own grave in a tunnel.
The hostages were released first to the Red Cross in Gaza, then driven across the border to Israel's Re'im military base, where they were reunited with their families and then medically assessed before being airlifted north. So, who are the hostages who are now free at last? On October 7, 2023, Matan Ungrest was a fit young Israeli doing his compulsory military service when Hamas took him prisoner. You can see him in a stomach-churning video, his limp body being held by Hamas fighters, then tumbling from the top of a tank as men surround him. 500 days later, Hamas released a video of an exhausted-looking Angrest saying he was losing hope.
שלום, קוראים לי מתן אנגריסט. נחטפתי ב-7 באוקטובר ממוצב נחל עוז. 511 יום בשבי של החמאס.
Ungrest was one of only 2 soldiers still alive in Hamas's custody. The other is another young man, Nimrod Cohen, who was captured when his tank caught fire in southern Israel. Islamic Jihad, which was holding security guard Rom Breslavsky, forced him to record a video showing his emaciated body. In the video, Breslavsky said he couldn't walk and begged for more food.
סובל בספל שלא נראה טוב, כף רגל, אני לא מצליח. לעמוד ללכת לשירותים, אני לא מצליח.
One of the most distressing videos Hamas released showed Evyatar David in a tunnel looking like a skeleton, digging his own grave.
ב-28 לשביעי, שעה 12, אין לי מושג אם יהיה אוכל.
David was with his friend Guy Gilboa Dalal at the Nova dance party, a bunch of free-spirited kids gathered in southern Israel. 2 of their friends were murdered at the party. A previously freed hostage has described Guy and Evyatar enduring malnutrition and torture. They were reportedly forced to sit facing a wall with black bags over their heads for long periods of time. Still to return are the corpses of remaining hostages who've died in the world's darkest places. They include an 85-year-old man abducted from his kibbutz and a 27-year-old woman in Bar Haman, abducted from the Nova Festival and killed in captivity. There's an African student, a Thai farm worker, and a taxi driver, all seized by Hamas during their rampage.
What complicates this matter logistically is that Hamas doesn't hold all of the bodies of the captives. There are other factions in Gaza and they have custody of some of these bodies. And we also know, because Hamas has made this point several times, that some of the dead captives are hidden under rubble or they're located in areas that are particularly difficult to reach just because of the circumstances of the war. But so this is an operation that is being coordinated by a number of different parties. It does involve Hamas, of course, but it also involves members of Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They've been holding captives this entire time. And obviously you've seen some differences in the treatment between some of the captives between the 2 groups. Those who've spent time in Hamas captivity have often reported slightly better conditions. Those who've spent time in Palestinian Islamic Jihad captivity, very different conditions. So the time that one spent in Gaza as a hostage really depended on who they were being held by, whereabouts, and at what point in time they were being held.
Israel held up its end of the deal, releasing more than 1,900 Palestinian prisoners. That includes 1,700 Palestinians detained in Gaza during the war and another 250 prisoners serving life sentences in Israeli prisons.
They belong to Hamas, they also belong to Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and they also belong to the secular Palestinian nationalist group concentrated in the West Bank called Fatah. One of the people being released, if I could provide you with a case study, is a man by the name of Ziad Awad. And he was originally released in 2011 under the deal to free Corporal Gilad Shalit. That was an Israeli soldier that was taken hostage by Hamas, kept in captivity for 5 years. And when he was released, there were more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners who were swapped for his life. And one of them was this man named Ziad Awad. And he'd been imprisoned for allegedly murdering a number of so-called collaborators with Israeli authorities. So these were Palestinians who had been killed. And after he was released, 3 years later, he took up a position on a roadside approaching the town of Hebron. He armed himself with an assault rifle and he waited for a passing car. And that passing car happened to belong to the Mizrahi family. He opened fire on the car and shot a number of bullets into it, instantly killing the driver, Baruch Mizrahi, and injuring quite badly his pregnant wife. Her name is Hadass, and we spoke to her over the weekend.
My husband, Baruch Mizrahi, was murdered in Hebron in 2014. Now the terrorists, the father and the son who murdered my husband, are getting released.
Everyone in Israel is elated with the arrival of the hostages back in Israel. But there's a steep price to pay for some Israelis in order to bring them home. And Hadass Mizrahi is one of those people. And what she said to me was essentially, there is a great deal of happiness for the hostages, an enormous amount of happiness. But for her, there is a sense of betrayal and there is a sense of sadness. And it hurts a lot to know that just 10 years ago, the man who took her husband's life was given a life sentence for the crime. He's supposed to be serving life. And in Australia, we know life as being life in jail. But here in Israel, there's a slightly different calculus with people who are in prison for terrorism. And it's because they know that if they wait it out long enough, they can envision a situation in which hostages are taken, held by a terrorist group, and then bartered for their release. And that appears to be, quite sadly and cynically, what's happened in this case.
Those life sentence prisoners have been told they'll be exiled from the West Bank and will be taken to Egypt. Their families also claim they'd been threatened by Israeli officials not to publicly celebrate the releases or host family parties. Coming up, Donald Trump addresses the Knesset. Donald Trump addressed Israel's parliament, the Knesset, on Monday night before travelling to Egypt for a peace summit co-convened with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. The topic, how to turn the ceasefire into a lasting peace.
The hostages are back. The hostages are back. It is a good feeling. Isn't that nice to say? Peace through strength. And that's what it's all about. The United States has the greatest and most powerful military in the, right now, history of the world. I can tell you we have weapons that nobody's ever dreamt of. I only hope we never have to use them. For so many families across this land, it has been years since you've known a single day of true peace. But now at last, not only for Israelis, but also for Palestinians and for many others, the long and painful nightmare is finally over.
Yoni, even before Donald Trump boarded Air Force One, he kept saying that the war is over. It's absolutely over. This is it. And he's very confident that Hamas is going to disarm. How confident do you think Israelis feel about that?
Well, it's certainly a remark that's being made by some of the hostage families and some of the people who've gathered at Hostage Square. And I think it's partly motivated by not just optimism, but a great deal of hope. I think everyone in Israel really wants the war to be over. And I'm sure there are plenty of people in Gaza who want the war to have ended, and plenty of people around the world feel the same way. But there are a couple of realities that need to come into effect for the war to truly be over, and key amongst them is that Hamas needs to lay down its arms and its leaders need to go into exile. And on its face, they appear to have committed to do that, but we're at only the first phase of this deal, and the first phase really was to get the hostages, all 48 of them alive and dead, out of Gaza. The next phase of that is going to be the real test for Hamas to see if it really does disarm. And if it does so, then the expectation is that the Israeli Defense Forces will pull out of Gazan territory entirely, or almost entirely, and it will create an opportunity for the Palestinian population there to rebuild their lives, to be done with the tunnels, and for some kind of civil authority to come in and rebuild the territory and improve their lives and create a circumstance of flourishing for them. But all of that is contingent on whether Hamas does actually disarm, and that remains to be seen.
Yoni Bashan and Liam Mendez are in the Middle East for The Australian. You can check out their reporting and all our coverage right now at theaustralian.com.au.